We do a photo shoot today about sirens, luring sailors onto the rocks. The venue is the south of Cyprus, the southwest, at Sea Caves near Paphos. There is a wreck there, the Edro 3, wrecked in December 2011. Nobody lost their life. They even managed to get all the fuel off, so not a disaster really, but a great scene to show the colours of the rocks, the colours of the rusty old ship, with some sirens from mythology. Greek mythology has sirens appearing many times. The most famous scene is of Odysseus tied to the mast of his ship, and his companions rowing the ship with wax in their ears so they couldn't hear the singing of the sirens. So we want to capture some mythology, but we also want to capture some fashion, homemade fashion from found objects, incorporating wool, because this is part of WOOLFEST Online. The costumes for this photo shoot were the idea of Lindsay Elise Jolly, who's here on a Erasmus Plus Pro placement for 6 months in Cyprus with Grampus Heritage. Lindsay has a background in art and fashion, and Lindsay's brief was to be sustainable, use recycled materials, and use wool, because the photo shoot became part of our offering from Cyprus to this online festival. So Lindsay worked with the students and created some great costume, some great jewellery, a real mythical look.
The interesting thing about this project is I had to work with seaweed and fishing net, materials that you don't commonly work with in fashion, so it made it more challenging, a bit more fun and interesting, something a little bit different. The costumes are made up of a combination of different approaches, so some of them are made entirely from scratch, and I've designed the shape of the dress. For example, this dress is made from net, made entirely from scratch, and then we've used old recycled fabrics from other garments or bed sheets that I've dyed, and we've included wool elements as embellishments in the tassels to try and get a very seaweedy, washed up kind of look. We've incorporated shells and bits of driftwood and all sorts of things that you would commonly find in the seaside to try and give it that siren feel. So the girls have helped me working with the embellishments and things. I designed the dress and got the base of the dress together, and then the girls have come in and helped to embellish it and really give a little bit of their ideas and their creativity to the project as well. This dress, on the other hand, was garment before we got it, and we just embellished it and added bits to it. It was nice to include this because the wool has the seascape colours, and it was quite an interesting thing to embellish, and it was interesting to see how much it changed once we started adding pieces to it, and I think this one particularly took on a very seaside look to it. To get the materials that we needed, I went with my colleague Jota to a local town called Ziggy, which is known as a fishing town. And we were very lucky that the tides were in our favour because there was seaweed, and there isn't always. It only washes up when you have rough waves. So we went and collected lots of seaweed to work with, and then we had a little adventure around the town where we went looking for fishermen. So we went and asked local people if they knew of fishermen that might have nets. It took a little bit of doing, and I think some people maybe sometimes think you're a little bit weird when you're asking for these strange things and you try and explain that it's for a photo shoot and so on. But we were very lucky. We found some really nice people who seemed actually quite enthusiastic about the idea, and they liked the fact that we were trying to use genuine materials, and we were trying to reuse things that were essentially waste, because we didn't want the nets that they were still using. We wanted the ones that no longer had any purpose. So they were in the end quite enthusiastic and very friendly and very helpful to us. So it was a little adventure. Like I say, I think sometimes people think you're a little bit strange, but at the end of the day it's worth it, and it introduces something new to them and a new idea, and it makes people start to think about the ideas of sustainability that we work with.
We introduced another element to the photo shoot, the god Poseidon, or Poseidonas in Greek. The gods were very controlling in Greek mythology, always observing, interfering, often dressing as humans or morphing into humans, or animals. Zeus often became a bull, also a swan. Poseidon is associated with the bull, and in some images wears a bull mask. Also, the dedications, the sacrifices to Poseidon, is always a black bull. So I'm very interested in masks. So we use this mask. It's handmade, it's natural materials. It fits well with the idea of sustainability, and it added a bit of mystery. So in a few shots, Poseidon appears observing, watching the Sirens with the ship in the background, interested in what's going on. Not interfering, just there and watching.
we had a great location. When I first saw the ship, it was probably around 5 months ago. We were with Martin working on a different project, and we were in that area, so he took me to that place just to show it to me. He already had the idea that he wants to do something, he wants to do a photo shoot there. We didn't quite know what yet, but when I saw it, I immediately fell in love with that location, so I knew that we need to shoot something there. And then we started brainstorming, and the Sirens came up, of course. Quite an obvious reference, but you know, one that really works with that location, so I was very happy to do that. And it's very interesting because when we first arrived at the shoot, typically a photo shoot starts early in the day, often in the morning, and then it goes throughout the whole day. Here we actually had to wait for the right light, because when we arrived at the location, the sun was in the middle of the sky, was really harsh, the shadows were very strong, and people were squinting and everything, so we had to wait for a good few hours until we got the sun a bit more softer, and that kind of orangey glow, the warm light that we get in the golden hour just before sunset. And this is when we got really some great shots and very saturated colors, as you can see. Another challenge that I faced was waiting for the waves, because I wanted a bit of drama, and every now and then we will get a bigger wave that will make a splash. So I had to ask the girls to freeze their poses for quite some time, and they were on these rocks that are quite sharp and not very comfortable, to say the least. So it was more of a challenge for them, I guess, than for me. But we did have a few of these shots where they had to literally stay in the same pose for quite some time, waiting for waves to come crashing. And so yeah, it was quite an interesting thing, and quite a fun thing as well. It was a fun shoot also because I'm working with people who are not professional models, and every now and then we would get onlookers, people just passing by and looking at us and seeing what we're doing, which could make you a bit uncomfortable, but I'm quite happy that everyone took quite well to it, and the girls were not too shy about it, so we were able to pull it off.
When I first saw the ship, I had no idea that the fashion show that we do in Cockermouth every year would be cancelled. So we were going to do this anyway, so we've tweaked it a little bit to put some wool in it. Of course, the period we're talking about, 2000 BC, wool was probably the main textile being worn anyway. Lindsay Elise Jolly designed and made the garments with students, and they incorporate fishing net, seaweed, shells, including a shell painted by Peter Bird using his very fine line, exquisitely decorated. And we see a siren listening to the sound of the sea in Peter's shell. It brings colour to the story, and it brings it up to date. People are always going to photograph the sunset at the Paphos end of Cyprus, and this is now a very popular venue to do that.